And that is actually the first time I've been introduced as a doctor at a talk. I feel quite special. Yeah, so I graduated in 2008 of last year, and then I got appointed at CREST. And because my interest has also always been in environmental sciences and the communication to the public, we came up with this project of citizen science, because most citizen science projects in South Africa is environmental related. I will show you a little bit about that, more about that. This project I'm doing with Professor Peter Weingart, who was originally supposed to do the talk, but he is not in South Africa currently. And for me, it's been such an honor to work with him. He is very big in science communication, and I've learned so much from him. So we thought we would look at the field of citizen science in South Africa. A study like this has not been done before, and I've always had an interest in science, citizen science, because when I did my master's, it was at the Animal Demography Unit at UCT, where they house a lot of citizen science projects. So just basically a short introduction, and that is all over the world, governments are pushing science policies to make science more accessible to people, and they do this through science communication and science education policies. It is basically so that people can be more knowledgeable about science and science processes, so that they can become more informed and can make better decisions either for themselves, for their communities, or even for national decisions, for example, about healthcare initiatives. And basically, a lot of these initiatives comes in the form of public engagement in science. And then a very specific form of public engagement in science is citizen science. And now this term was first coined in 1994 by a scientist called Irwin, and he published it in 1995. But the original definition was that it's the participation in policy decisions. So basically, the participation of the public in making decisions about science issues. And then there was a surge in the literature and in policy documents of citizen science. And so basically, it changed a little bit, and now for a very simple definition, it basically just means that it's when citizens actually partake in science or scientific research. But then there has been now this massive uptake in it in the science and technology field, with the hope that it democratizes science, basically making science accessible to the public so that the public can become more knowledgeable and make better decisions. So this is where our study comes from. We want to see if it is actually the case that citizen science projects in South Africa actually is making the public more knowledgeable. So is it really a reality that the public is included in the scientific process? So before I can go on with what we are specifically doing, there's a whole bunch of models of citizen science out there and what they are trying to do. And the first one I want to touch in is the community engagement science model, which is by Wilderman and colleagues. And he has three models. And the first is the community consulting model. So this is the community realizes there's a problem. They come up with the question. They go to the scientist, and the scientists kind of run through it. They design the project, they collect the data, they analyze it, and they interpret those results. And the second model is the community workers model. This is when the problem is made, the question is asked by scientists, and they use the public or citizens to help them with data collection. The analyzing of the data is predominantly by professional scientists, but sometimes they get the community involved, and then the interpretation of the data is by scientists. And then model 3 is the community-based or the participatory-based research, and basically that is when a community is completely in charge of a project, so it's more of a private initiative from a community side. Then the next one is the public participation model of citizen science. And the first one there is a contributory project. So that is basically, as in the previous slide, it is when, like model 2, it is when the community helps with data collection. Collaborative projects would be when there is help with volunteers in designing the project, as well as coming up with the research and just working collaboratively with the scientists. And then co-creative projects is even more. They are in all aspects involved in the citizen science project. So these two models kind of go hand in hand. then you can classify citizen science projects based on their outcome. It's been described by more than one researcher, but I've only referenced 2 here, and most recently it was Alinda in 2016. So an action project is when the project outcome is to help with a concern that a community or public participants have. Then a scientific research problem would be when the citizens collect the data to answer a specific science question. Conservation project is again a citizen science project that is aimed to reach a conservation goal. The investigation project focuses on a very specific research goal, again as for example conservation goal, but now in this case it's just not a conservation goal. A virtual project would be a citizen science project where the citizens that are helping with this project uses information technology to help them, which is quite actually a very common thing today because of the internet and it making life so much more easier for people to access information. Education projects is when a citizen science project's aim is not just scientific research, but it can be educational outputs. For example, they want to make public more aware of certain issues in their communities. And then it's policy and management decision projects, and that would be that the outcome of a citizen science project is basically trying to make policy and management decisions better. Is it for local government? Is it for national government? Whatever the case. Again, conservation sometimes comes up in this because if you, for example, gather information about birds, which is a very common topic in citizen science, it can help you with conservation management decisions on the protection of this bird species. Dickinson and Bonney, both big authors in citizen science, also say that citizen science can vary in 4 different ways. So the project initiator, and like we've touched, it can be the community that comes up with it, i.e. the citizens, or it can be the scientists. And then can vary on the scale and duration of the project. Is it a very local project that just focuses on a small, for example, reserve, or is it a larger project that focuses on a whole nation or a whole continent even sometimes? The duration of the project can also be, is it a citizen science project with the goal just to collect data for one specific paper that you're going to kind of put out there, or is it an ongoing project, for example, like the South African Bird Atlas projects, that the first one is completed and the second one is ongoing, and that's been going for years. It can also obviously vary on the fact that there are different questions that needs to be asked and vary on the goals like we have just discussed in the previous model. Now the model we are basing our research on is the participatory science cube, which is quite an interesting field because this is based on a democracy cube where someone explained how public can be part of the democracy of a nation. So they took this framework and made it more applicable for science, so that is the participatory science cube. We are basing our research on that. And it doesn't technically look like a cube here, I guess, but 3-dimensional. So the first part is a normative focus, and that will be how the public is involved in the decision-making of the process. Is it a collaboration? Do scientists go to the public for consultation? Do they have public discussions? Then the epistemic focus would be, is how much it contributes to the knowledge generation of the project. So what's the input basically of the public in the process? And then what's the reach of the project? Does it reach just experts in the field? Does it reach people that are interested? Does it reach the whole public as a whole? But there are limitations to this model, as in any case, and we are actually addressing these limitations in our study, or we are aiming to. So the one is, what is the origin of the project, which we have seen in the other models. Who created the question? What are they researching? Who is, responsible for that? Excuse me. And then we are also looking at, which has not been done, is where are these programs administered? Where are they located? Because it makes a difference in the project if it's a private community that's administering this project, because there's probably a lack of funding in a case like that, versus if it's a massive project where a government, where academic institutions are all involved, where it's funded by 10 to 12 different companies or institutions. So we will be also addressing that in our research. We can have a whole bunch of research questions. I will not be answering them all today because we have not finished our data collection, obviously. But the first one is how is citizen science defined in South Africa in the academic literature and in government documents. The second one will then be if we are comparing it between the definitions in more industrialized countries like Europe, the European Union, the United States, as well as the United Kingdom. These two questions, we have started doing the literature review on this, but we have not actually done the analysis. So I will just show some examples in a little bit. Then we are looking at what is the area of involvement of citizens in South Africa. Do these projects actually make open for science policy debates, or are they just contributing to research? Then research question 4 is where are these projects located or administered? Are they academic institutions, governmental institutions, or non-profit institutions? That was the original question. We've actually added a fourth category, which I am naming private, so that would be a community project that doesn't have any help from outside. The fifth question is, where did the research question studied with citizen science project in SA originate? So that would be, is it a community question? Is it a community project? Is it a science institution that created this issue? We have not completed this research. We actually need to speak to the project managers, and that's not something we've done because we only got our ethical clearance a little while ago. Research question 6 is, in which disciplines are the citizen science projects to be found? With the fact that it says that citizen science creates all this knowledge, you would think it should be very multidisciplinary, and it is, but you will see that it's also very limited to a handful of disciplines. And that could just be because some disciplines it would be easier to make use of citizens to collect data. We will be looking at that, but I will give some preliminary results on that. We want to see what the degree of involvement of citizens are in the science citizens projects. Are they helping with the questions? Are they just doing data collection? Are they helping with the problem definitions? Are they helping with the interpretations? Those are the things that have come up in all the models. So we are looking at that. We have some data on that already from what we got from websites. Again, we still need to speak to the project managers. We want to know how the data or the information they get from these projects, how we are communicating it to the public. This is not completed because we can get some literature from that while doing literature research, but we might not know if they do blog posts or if they run Twitter accounts. So we actually want to go to the managers for that as well. We want to know which of these projects have a scientific output and which are educational. We have got some results on that based on what we have done on the desktop studies we have done. But again, we need to get more information on that. And then we want to know if peer-reviewed publications actually mention citizen science. Because if not, they are automatically excluding citizens from the scientific process. If you don't acknowledge the fact that you make use of citizens, you're excluding them, and does that actually fully democratize science? Again, that is not completed. That's going to be quite a literature study that's going to come in handy. And then the last one is, what are the characteristics of projects? We have got a lot of the data, but we still have to speak to the managers. So just briefly, we have done a literature review, but we have not reviewed all the literature. There's obviously a lot of literature based on citizen science research in South Africa. But I will show some examples for the definitions for research question 1 and 2. Then we've done a desktop research. This was obviously to get all the information about projects. We have come up with 56 citizen science projects in South Africa that's either still ongoing or has happened. We are by no means saying this is the only citizen science projects. This is what we have found in our research, either desktop or literature reviews. And then we have done a website analysis to answer a whole bunch of the research questions, which you will see now. So this is basically going to the websites of or Facebook pages when they don't have a website of these citizen science projects and seeing if we can get information from there. So we still need to collect the data from the project managers, as I've stated, and we still need to continue our literature analysis to answer some of the research questions. Some preliminary results. These are 56 projects. I'm not going to go through them, but it's quite a wide range of disciplines, from astronomy to biological science, and you'll see a little bit more of the layout when I show that in the results. A lot of them are housed at the same academic institutions or governmental institutions. For example, 47 to 50, the CETIS projects are all South African National Biodiversity Institute programs. And then obviously they also have a whole bunch of different projects. The suburb, the frog map, a lot of the ones with maps are all housed at UCT. So you can already, by just looking at the websites even before analysis, actually realize that they are kind of concentrated at specific institutions in South Africa. And again, we're not saying these are the only ones. So definitions of citizen science. So this is for South African citizen science. And you can kind of see a trend that it is very it's volunteers, it's very focused on it's not scientists doing it, and that they're helping with data collection. Data collection out of these three come up. The definition in Willie et al. Doesn't even mention what they help with, they just state that it's volunteers that's helping. So there's definitely kind of still, I've just shown the most recent, there's a lot more that goes back to 2017. But you can clearly see that it's the public that do it voluntarily and helps with data collection. Opportunistic sightings would also be a form of data collection. And then again, this is just from 2017, some example of international definitions, and you can clearly already see it's more in-depth, the definitions, when they explain it in international literature, where they say that it's public engagement and volunteers, but without formal scientific training. And I mean, Pocock just said people, that's quite broad. And then they sometimes even add a function where they say they do it without the use of institutionalized scientists. For example, Strobel and Pollock, which is a 2019 paper, so it's obviously very new. So the definitions in these, without the analysis being done, we can clearly already see that they're actually quite a little bit more in detail than the South African definitions we've come across. In research question 4, the location of citizen science projects. Of the 56 projects, over 60% are housed at academic institutions. So that, in all these cases, there are universities across the country. When I say that are housed at these institutions, it's the main institution that's administering the project. There is overlap where the government will provide funding for some of these projects, but the main institution is what this analysis is. Private is again an example. If there's I found a hedgehog citizen science project, and if you see a little hedgehog in South Africa, you can send them the picture with your GPS coordinates. I've not spoken to the person that's running this project, but it's not funded by any project, so that's why it is under private at the moment. NGOs, for example, would be BirdLife, that even though they have funding from the government, it would be BirdLife's initiative that is running this. So it's very clear that academic institutions are currently in charge of this. Which can indicate, which can indicate that basically it doesn't reach that far yet if you think about where these institutions are. Then the disciplines. This is quite a difficult one for me to analyze. I did a Web of Science research, and I got my disciplines from there, so I didn't just think of these disciplines. But it's quite clear where you can see. So obviously there's a lot more because there are multidisciplinary research. For example, the South African BID as this project where they will focus on ornithology, which I put under zoology, but they obviously also look at biodiversity and conservation related issues with their data. So this is obviously a lot more than 56. But you can clearly see that biological and environmental studies and sciences are in the lead in this field. And we have not looked at the reasoning why, but it's easy to collect data. It's easy to ask someone that if they go to a nature reserve to send a picture of what they've seen there. I mean, it's definitely easier than astronomy, because not everyone has a telescope to be able to contribute to that. On the astronomy, there's only one project in South Africa based on astronomy. It's not active though. They have a little website and a section dedicated to it, but it is currently not active. They're currently not collected any data on it. Then the public contribution to citizen science project. It's data collection in South Africa. From the 56 projects we've analyzed, what we've been able to find out is data collection. And we are actually not surprised. Article writing is kind of something I had to come up with because we didn't come across anything like that. And it's 2 projects in South Africa. It is the biodiversity observations based at UCT, which used to be ornithological observations. And it's a non-peer-reviewed journal, and anyone can, if they've seen anything, they can write it up, send it to the editor, and they will publish it for you. So anyone can write there. I have published in there, but I did it very separate from my academic research. So, and then the other example is called Penguin Watch, which is also a UCT initiative. It is a website that is dedicated to informing the public about the penguin research that is happening at Bristol University as well as UCT. And but you can contact them with information, and they're willing to publish it on their blogs or their news site. So that's why that is part of the citizen science project. But the rest, I mean, 96% is for data collection. In the outputs of citizen science projects, so here there is obviously overlap because some can be scientific and some can be educational and some can only be educational or only scientific. But again, it's a scientific, the goal is to give a scientific output. These results might change once we've spoken to the project managers. We are very aware that this is what we're getting from the websites or literature that we have found. But I mean, 41 out of 56 projects is the goal is scientific. I can't remember exactly the second educational one, but the other one is the Imbivani project that's based here at the Department of Botany and Zoology, which started out as a citizen science project and has now completely gone into an education initiative where they go to schools, they work with ants, and they set up little experiments in the classrooms. And initially it was to collect the data with ants, but then they realized how successful it was as an education project that has completely moved over into an education project, but it's still considered citizen science because they are still working with the public with these processes and helping the students with these processes. Scientific and educational could be anything from where they collect data on birds and they want to educate the public on birds, what you can find in your gardens and how to help birds in your gardens. That's just an example. So that would be our research question number 9. So that is all we have. So I won't be filling a whole hour of your time, but basically what we have found, and like I said, we obviously don't have an entire paper yet because we're kind of in the middle of this when we were asked to speak here. But from what we can currently see is that citizen science does not actually democratize science as much as a lot of literature says. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen like that any places in the world. I'm just saying the current state in South Africa doesn't look like it's making science more accessible to the public. The fact that the majority of these projects are based at academic institutions, for example, universities, means that the projects probably still only get communicated to academics or scholars. And it just means that the knowledge that is produced probably doesn't reach a wider public as much as you'd want it to, with the fact that you get citizens to help you with a lot of your data collection. So therefore, it probably doesn't help the public make such contribution to the citizen and the scientific process, and it also probably doesn't help them as much to make decisions around science. Another is because the data collection is the only part they are helping with the process in majority, means that data collection can be done by anyone. These projects don't offer training for most of these things. The bird reading project, for example, does, because not everyone can just capture a bird and ring it. You need the right equipment and the right rings. There is a more scientific input. But in general, because a lot of people just have to upload a photo to a website because of information technology making it so much easier, it really doesn't do. So basically, just to sum it up, is that the results I have presented and that we have so far, which is not all the results, and there's a lot of hype and enthusiasm around the term citizen science, and especially globally, but the promise is not really the reality in South Africa right now. And I'm not by no means saying anything bad about Citizen Science Project. I need to make it clear, I think there's so much good in it, and I think it creates so much fun for a lot of people. And I do believe people learn, and it makes them want to go out in the field and help. But the fact that it makes the public more knowledgeable, it doesn't currently look like that is happening in South Africa. Do anyone want to ask any questions?
Thank you very much for